Hi everyone and welcome. I'm out here in my garden, and if you're a regular on my channel, then you'll know that I've got an outdoor worm bin that I've been having a little bit of difficulty with lately. But if you have been watching those videos and you're familiar with what's going on, then I think I've got a solution. So for those of you that don't know what's going on, let me get you up to speed. I guess long story short is the fact that my worm bin was just resting on the ground. A number of either moles or voles or shrews or some sort of little burrowing creature. Some people even suggested that maybe it was a rat. It's hard to say, but basically that bin was resting on the ground, and this tub right here that you see in front of us was upside down, covering it, in the hopes that it would keep any sort of larger size prey animals from invading the bin. But I guess what I ended up really succumbing to was a very small sized prey animal making its way into the worm system and ravaging it, basically almost wiping out the entire worm population. So that's where this stuff comes into play, because my newest idea now is to place the bag inside of this container, but elevate it off the ground using this planter, which kind of stays right in the middle because of that feature on the bottom of the container, so it prevents it from sliding here and there. And then I've got this piece of roughly cut plywood that I fashioned to fit in here, and it seems to fit depending on how I orient it. It drops in pretty nicely, rests on top of the planter, and now if anything makes its way into this container, if it's down on the ground floor, it's going to need to be able to, I guess, scale the fairly smooth surface of this planter to get up to the top, but still they're only going to be able to get to a horizontal surface, kind of a ceiling that they'll be unable to get to unless they can climb around it somehow. And I'm not sure if the creatures that have been causing the harm inside of my worm bag are capable of that, but I'm thinking that this might just be the trick to solving our problem. So I've not yet tried to see how it fits, so this is going to be my first try at it. So let's see, if we place it in here, it does sort of stand out above the upper rim of the garbage pail, but since it's a flexible material, I guess I could fold it down. Then I do always have the option to actually place the lid of the trash pail on here as well for added protection. Sometimes I leave it uncovered, let the rain drop in, let things get moist. I think that would be just as good too, leaving it open to the air. So this is where we stand, I think, with my outdoor worm bin. Granted, we've got ourselves a really decimated population in here. A population that we estimated to be somewhere around 5,000 could at this point be down to just maybe a couple hundred worms, based on me probing through here a little bit yesterday. You know what? That gives me an idea. I think we could solve that problem. Yes, some of you might already be a step ahead of me. We're gonna put on a glove, grab our little transport container, and we're gonna visit in on our outdoor compost tub. So my outdoor compost tub, although I've never even put a single worm in it, has been our go-to source for obtaining worms to populate our outdoor worm bin. And all those worms that have ever made their way into this bin, and trust me, there's a lot of them, have all made their way in here voluntarily. And I would think that at this point generations of worms have been breeding in here, because the numbers are phenomenal. There's just so many worms in this container, it's unreal. So we're gonna do what we've done before. The outdoor worm bin, before it got invaded, had been populated 6 times. 6 times we had taken worms out of here and placed them into the outdoor worm bin, and some lucky critter has managed to fill their belly with all those worms at this point. So as I mentioned to one of my viewers, I guess it is just sort of a circle of life thing, so it's not so bad if you think about it. It's not like they just died. The worms ultimately did end up nourishing some other little creature out here in my garden who's simply trying to get by. Wow, look at that. Holy cow. Now this is something I've been unsure of over the past couple months with the colder weather rolling in. I've been unsure if the black soldier flies that had been sharing this space with my worms were still able to withstand the chilly temperatures. I mean, we even had one evening where my garden got knocked out by the freezing temperatures. And I thought that the black soldier fly larvae kind of had a requirement for some slightly warmer weather. So I've been suspecting that these little guys are just going to eventually peter out in time, leaving only worms in here maybe, but we've definitely got ourselves a good colony of black soldier fly larvae thriving in here, right alongside the worms. Pretty much anywhere you look, you're going to find black soldier flies working hand in hand with the worms to break down all of my garden waste. As you see here, this is the vines of a cucumber, and you saw all kinds of peppers and tomatoes and stuff that I had thrown in here after I had dismantled, well, maybe not dismantled my garden, because my garden is still intact, but I took down all the stuff that could drop to the ground and end up leaving seeds all over the place with all kinds of stuff growing everywhere. So let's see what we could do in terms of rounding up some volunteers out of here, help us populate, or repopulate, I guess at this point, our outdoor worm bin. And you know, a lot of times I get sort of picky and I think to myself, well, I'm only going to take a handful that really has a clear mob of worms in it, but then usually I need to just talk myself into not being so picky and just take whatever the heck I can get. Otherwise we'll be here all day, you know, not taking the volunteers that are probably willing to come on over and help us with this project. So let's actually begin. Let's start small. My aim is not to pull worms out one by one. I would like to try to get, you know, good size handfuls. There's certainly nothing wrong with bringing along a little bit of extra material that they're already inhabiting. Let them remain cozy in there. I guess it might just be easier if I do go with handfuls and assume that I'm going to be bringing along a lot of extra material for the ride. And if possible, just picking out larger chunks of it. But pressing on and trying to just get the job done instead of goofing around. Goofing around is often something I can't seem to resist doing either. I just get a kick out of seeing all the different things cruising around inside this compost bin. So many different interesting creatures, mainly worms and black soldier fly larvae. But we often see interesting little insects hanging around in here too, and other things. So we'll see what else we spot along the way. But I don't want to turn this into too much of a sightseeing mission either. I do want to get my outdoor worm bin back online, and I think this is going to work, this game plan that we've devised here. So I just pulled out a little chunk of what I think is plastic, so let's get rid of that. Let's see if we could swing around to this other side of the bin, and maybe we'll have greater luck locating a larger number of worms over here. Sometimes I wonder if it's maybe the side of the bin that faces the sun that actually gets a little bit of radiant energy shining on it. Maybe that's where the worms are kind of gravitating towards, since there might be a little bit of extra warmth there now that the air temperatures are dropping as the cooler winter weather starts to roll in. But at this point I really couldn't even tell you which side was facing south. You know, I had to kind of roll the container to get it over here into a shady spot. It's a very bright sunny day, and that adds up to really harsh lighting if you shoot out in the direct sunlight. So I'm over here in a shady spot to film this, trying to keep it such that the scene that we're filming is sort of camera friendly, with a more flat kind of a lighting scenario. And I guess I'm going to do what I normally do, which is I'm just going to treat the capacity of this little container as my my limit for the day. I don't know if it could be because of all the large extractions of worms that we've done in the past. But the numbers in this seem to be a little bit less than usual, or maybe, yeah, look at that. This handful seems to have been kind of a mother lode. We must have found something that the worms are really enjoying here. And I'm going to just leave it behind, unfortunately. I just want the worms, not the food that they're eating. The bin that we're moving them over into does have a fair bit of food in it still, even though it's been, I believe, 3 weeks as of yesterday, or maybe today, that we last put food in there. There's still a good amount of that food remaining in there. Because, yeah, I guess the invading animals didn't come in there for that food that was put in there for the worms. They came in there for the worms themselves. So all that stuff that probably would have been eaten up by now by the worms is still in there, ready to go. And probably even better, easier for the worms to take advantage of at this point due to the passage of time. So I'm almost out of space inside this container. We'll see what we could do in terms of getting just a little bit more. But once we're full, we're going to head on over to the worm bin and release the little guys that we recruited in today's effort here. So I'm kind of glad that I'm doing this. Many people had provided feedback, kind of giving me the easy out, just saying, forget it. Don't bother with this thing. It's a waste of time. But, I don't know. It just seemed like it would be a fairly easy attempt at trying to set the bin up in a way that the little invading predator creature would be unable to access the bin as easily as they had in the past. Seems like I got no worms on that one. I'm putting that back. Let's leave it at that at this point, I guess. So, but then I got some other feedback, encouraging me to, no, don't give up, or, let's get that bin back online somehow. So I figured, what the heck, it seemed like an easy enough thing to try, so here we are. I'm curious to see how many worms we got in here. We're not going to get a good view of it, unfortunately. There's so much other stuff in here, but at least we'll know that we've got, a somewhat decent number of worms with which to sort of repopulate the bin and try to get things going in there again. So let's head over there now. Okay, so with the magic of video, here we are. We're at the outdoor worm bag. See what I did there? So before last time when we were in here, yesterday, picking around, we were probing around here with a stick, because not only did I find traces of little burrows and tunnels that had been dug into the material by the invaders, by the raiders, I also found traces of, some fecal matter left behind by those little guys. Some of it was pretty good sized stuff. And I just didn't have a great deal of interest in running my bare fingers through it. So I didn't want to touch it with my hands, and I didn't have gloves handy either. I was just doing a quick status update for people to let them know that, my outdoor worm bin had fallen on hard times and what the situation was. But I got gloves on now, so I don't feel so bad probing around in here. Give us a little bit better look as to what's really happening. Maybe if we go down a little bit deeper than we did yesterday, maybe we'll see some worms that managed to evade being preyed on. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. So let's see if we can go right down to the bottom. And I could see already some of the signs of the food that had been dropped down into the hole there for them to eat. A lot of it remaining. Like I said, 3 weeks. 3 weeks since a lot of this food was added. In fact, some of this stuff I think even predates 3 weeks. Some of it might have been in here for a month already. Because I think the stuff that went in very late in the game was some of this stuff. Like the leaves and the stalks and the stems and stuff from beets. But I think that the cabbage itself that we're seeing a lot of here, the lighter colored material, was placed in there even prior to that. So, I mean, this ain't a great deal of food, and especially if there was a 5,000 strong population in this container, this much food would have probably been history by now, quite a while ago. I've got a feeling that the population in here got wiped out pretty quickly right from the beginning, and then I guess maybe the critters just kept coming back. So I did notice the signs of the critters being in here, and I kind of leveled things off and filled in all the little holes and tunnels that they'd been burrowing. then when I would come back another day or two later, or maybe even just the next day, I would already see signs of their activity once again. So they could have been in here for weeks already, you know, picking away at the worm population, chowing down. And you know, I mean, let's not say there's no worms in here, because if you pick around, you see a worm or two here and there. But you know, you've got to admit, when you've got a system that you expect that has something in the neighborhood of 5,000 worms in it, especially a system that's only this large, you would be expecting to see worms pretty much everywhere. And like I said, worms are everywhere, but not in the numbers that you would expect. Alright, so let's I think that probing around kind of told us that there unfortunately isn't really a huge number of worms that weren't, you know, capable of evading being preyed on. Looks like the majority of the population in here did in fact get wiped out. Poor little guys. And the you know, the presence of all the leftover food is a clear indicator of that as well. So so hopefully the worms that we're adding today will help us recover here a little bit, get the population back up to a respectable number. And I guess all this food that I sort of gathered together, I'll go ahead and I'll try to focus it into a single spot down into this little hole I just dug. And then if the worms congregate in that pile of food right there, we'll have no problem locating them the next time we pop ourselves in here to see how things are holding up. So let's just cover up the feeding area, not too much. The worms should have no problem locating that bounty of food right there. And I guess we might be back out here trying to recruit more worms for my outdoor compost bin to help repopulate this container more and more. But for now, I think this is enough just to help us sort of recover and partially at least restore the depleted population in the container. Oops. Did we get everyone? I think so. So a lot of times this is our one and only chance to see how many worms we were able to collect up. So let's take a peek at what we pulled together here. I know we're not going to be able to clearly see how many worms there are, but at least we could see that there's a fair number of them, which is certainly going to help this bin hopefully get back on its feet again. Alright, let's leave these little guys to get cozy, give them a minute or two to dive down and get acclimated into their new space. Here's another of my little composting friends. It's the oops. Did I find him? If I did find him, it would be a miracle. If you caught a glimpse of what I had snatched up out of the bin, it was one of those little roly-poly creatures, those isopods. I used to have them in my downstairs wormery in the bins there too. Probably hitched a ride on some of the leaves I was hauling inside. But I don't know what happened to them. I haven't seen them in quite some time now. But I wouldn't mind having them in my downstairs worm bin. They're a great helper and they work down some of the rougher, tougher materials in a bin. So that's pretty cool. But I think we're pretty much done here. I've got the, oops, keep bumping into the camera. I've got the cardboard that was in here, but you know, you may have noticed if you watched yesterday's video that cardboard was covered with fecal matter of whatever it is that was creeping around in here, stealing our worms. So typically that cardboard would go to cover this piece of plastic right here before I put this heavier piece of wood on top to sort of hold things down and keep things in place. But for now, I'm going to omit that piece of cardboard. That cardboard is going to go into the recycling, and I'm going to get a fresh, clean piece of cardboard to replace that with. But I'm not prepared to put that on here right now. I'll have to fashion that and get back in here to cover it up at some point. But that's pretty much it. We're almost done here. I've got a little bit of a cleanup to do. I've got to clean this container, and I think, yeah, I don't think cleaning this glove is necessary because it's going in the trash. I've once again torn another of my gloves. But like I said, what remains is just cleanup and putting things away, which is boring, so I'm not going to take your time with that. So before I go, really quick, I just want to say thank you. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to give me a thumbs up. It's always really appreciated, and also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.